Picture this. It's 1971. A boxy little Japanese sedan pulls up to the starting line at a professional Trans Am race. Next to it, European sports cars with racing pedigree and factory teams. The crowd laughs. The commentators dismiss it. But when the checkered flag drops, the Japanese car wins. The Datsun 510 was a small, inexpensive Japanese sedan introduced around 1968. In the showroom, it was marketed as an affordable family car with a 1.6-liter engine. Nothing flashy at all. It was sometimes called a poor man's BMW because it had a similar shape and features to sportier European sedans, but at half the price. No one expected this humble Datsun to become a motorsport star. Yet in the early 1970s, the Datsun 510 shocked the racing world by beating more prestigious cars in professional racing competitions. The breakthrough came in the Sports Car Club of America Trans-American Sedan Championship, commonly known as Trans Am. In 1971, the SCCA introduced a new class for smaller engines under 2.5 liters, and the Datsun 510 entered as an underdog. A racing team called Brock Racing Enterprises, or BRE, led by Pete Brock, prepared the 510 for this series. They painted it in bold red, white, and blue colors and gave it the number 46. Behind the wheel was a young American driver named John Morton. At the time, European cars like the Alfa Romeo GTV and BMW 2002 were favored to win. These brands already had racing pedigree. Few believed that the little Datsun from Japan could match the pace of the Alfas and BMWs, but the Datsun's racing debut proved everyone wrong. In the very first race of the 1971 season at Breyer Motorsports Park, John Morton put the 510 on pole position. That is the fastest qualifying time. This surprised the spectators and competitors. Here was a boxy economy sedan outpacing more established sports cars. Morton later recalled that it was quite an outstanding moment, and that after that first race, the team realized they really had something special. That 1971 season turned into a dramatic David versus Goliath story. The BRE Datsun 510, often called the Giant Killer, consistently battled and defeated the previously favored European cars. John Morton and the 510 won 6 out of the 10 races, clinching the championship in the under 2.5-liter class. It was against all odds, a major upset that put Datsun on the map in American racing. In fact, the Datsun 510 won not just the 1971 championship, but also repeated the feat in 1972, again with John Morton driving for BRE. Over those 2 seasons, the number 46 Datsun 510 achieved 12 overall race victories and 2 championship titles. Race fans could hardly believe that an inexpensive compact car was outperforming the likes of Alfa and BMW. Nissan, Datsun's parent company, later noted that the first championship in 1971 was considered a major upset in the racing community. What made the Datsun 510 so good? John Morton himself gave insight into why this economy car turned out to be a great racer. He explained that the 510 was simple in design, lightweight, and had 4-wheel-independent suspension, much like a BMW, which gave it excellent handling in corners. The engine was a sturdy 4-cylinder that BRE tuned for more power. It could make more horsepower per cubic inch than its rivals, according to Morton. BRE's mechanics focused on getting the car down to the minimum weight allowed by the rules, even simplifying the roll cage and stripping unnecessary parts. "We concentrated on weight down and horsepower up," Morton said, describing their winning formula. The result was a nimble car that could brake later and corner faster on twisty tracks, which often gave it an edge over heavier or more powerful competitors. It did not hurt that Morton was an excellent driver and that the BRE team was very skilled in preparation and strategy. One memorable moment came at the final race of the 1971 season, held at Laguna Seca. The championship fight had come down to Datsun versus Alfa Romeo. Whichever won that race would take the title. The Alfa team was so desperate to beat the Datsun that they illegally modified their car with an oversized fuel tank to avoid making pit stops. In the race, the Alfa finished first, but was later disqualified for cheating, handing the victory and the championship to John Morton and the Datsun 510. "We did not go to the winner's circle," Morton recalled. "We went a day later after Alfa was disqualified. The crowd of fans was thrilled. Many had come to love the plucky little Datsun that could beat the giants." The BRE Datsun 510's triumphs in 1971 and 1972 not only earned trophies, but also changed perceptions. It revolutionized sedan racing in America, according to some, showing that Japanese cars could be serious contenders. After those victories, the Datsun 510's legacy was set. It remains one of the most popular historic racing cars in amateur circuits even today. Nissan's support for customers and the cars. Robust engineering meant people continued to race 510s for years, keeping its legend alive. Enthusiasts still talk about how the mighty little Datsun 510 shocked the under 2.5 class in 1971 and 1972, beating the European favorites. An old black-and-white promotional film about the season was even titled "Against All Odds," underlining how improbable the 510's success was. But it really happened. A humble economy sedan became a champion race car, thanks to a clever team and a driver who believed in its potential. The Datsun 510's story shows that in racing, smart design and reliability can punch above their weight, sometimes even toppling the giants of the sport. In the mid-1960s, one of the most punishing motorsport events on the planet was the East African Safari Rally. This rally took place on the rough roads of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, spanning thousands of kilometers of dirt, mud, rocks, and river crossings. The Safari Rally was so difficult that many years fewer than 20% of the cars would reach the finish line. It was the ultimate test of a car's durability and a driver's endurance. Often called the world's toughest rally. Now imagine a heavy, old-fashioned Swedish family car with a rounded hunchback shape tackling these conditions. That car was the Volvo PV 544. In showrooms, the PV 544 was known for being safe, solid, and reliable, not for speed. It was the type of car parents drove in the late 1950s and early 1960s. But in 1965, a Volvo PV 544 pulled off a remarkable victory in the Safari Rally, proving that toughness can beat pure speed. In endurance racing, Volvo actually had a history in rallying. The company had a competition department that prepared cars for long-distance rallies. Drivers like Gunnar Andersson and Tom Trana had some successes in European rallies with the PV 544 in the early 1960s. However, the Safari Rally in Africa was a different beast entirely, filled with heavy rains, deep mud, and rocky terrain. In 1964, Volvo sent a team of 4 PV 544s to compete in the Safari, but it ended in disaster. Only one Volvo even made it to the finish, and that one was so late it was not counted in the results. The rest broke down or got stuck in the brutal conditions. It looked like the African rally was too much for the sturdy Swedish cars. One of those 1964 Volvo rally cars was left behind in Kenya after the race. And here enters the hero of our story, Joginder Singh, a Kenyan-born rally driver of Indian Sikh heritage. Joginder was a talented mechanic and driver who had competed in the Safari Rally multiple times in other cars, though he had not won it yet. He became interested in the abandoned Volvo PV 544 because he knew the car was very rugged. In late 1964, he bought that used Volvo PV 544 on a small loan from the local dealer, which was aptly named Amazon Motors. The car had already been through 2 seasons of rally abuse and even a crash, but Joginder saw potential in it. Over the next few months, he carefully repaired and modified the PV 544 along with his co-driver and brother, Jaswant Singh. They tuned the engine for a bit more power, reinforced the suspension to handle potholes, and added some clever custom touches to prepare for the next Safari Rally. By April 1965, as the 13th East African Safari Rally began, the Singh brothers showed up at the starting line in Nairobi with their white Volvo PV 544. Immediately, observers gave them little chance. The Volvo team had failed the year before. The car was older and heavier than many competitors, and the Singh brothers were essentially private entrants without a big factory budget. Other teams had newer, faster cars and lots of support. No one thought the Sikh brothers in their turbans had much of a chance this time. To make matters seem worse, Joginder and Jaswant drew the #1 starting position, which in this rally was considered unlucky. It meant they would be opening the route. If the roads were dusty, they would have clear vision with no one in front of them, but if the roads were muddy, they would have to forge a path for others. Day after day, through pouring rain and treacherous ground, the Volvo PV 544 stayed ahead. Other favorites dropped out one by one. By the end of the 5-day ordeal, only 21 out of 94 cars managed to finish at all. But leading them into the finish in Nairobi was the Singh's white Volvo car, #1. Joginder and Jaswant Singh had won the 1965 Safari Rally, making history. The crowd at the finish line went wild when the brothers crossed the line in first place. They not only won, they won by the largest margin ever recorded up to that time. The second-place car arrived a full hour and 40 minutes later. It was an absolute domination, truly earning them the nickname the Flying Sikh for Joginder's driving heroics. The 1965 Safari Rally win was not the end of the Singh brothers' story. Joginder Singh would go on to win the Safari Rally 2 more times in the 1970s, earning his place as a rally legend. But he always said the Volvo PV 544 was his favorite car. The reason was clear. The PV 544 stood out for its endurance. In rallies, a car that simply stays intact when others fall apart can outrun more powerful rivals. The Volvo's sturdy construction, reliable engine, and the brothers' mechanical savvy made the difference. This tale of the Volvo PV 544 in 1965 is a classic example of an economy car using its strength and reliability to conquer an extreme challenge. It was not the fastest on paper, but it was toughest where it counted. The Singh brothers' victory remains one of the most famous in rally history. A true underdog story of a plain Volvo that became king of the safari. By the early 1990s, the world of off-road racing had a premier event series known as Rally Raid, epitomized by the famous Paris-Dakar Rally. The Paris-Dakar, now just called Dakar Rally, was an insane test of man and machine. Drivers raced for thousands of kilometers across Saharan deserts, savannas, and dunes for days on end. These rallies demanded vehicles that could withstand jumping over sand dunes, crawling through rocks, and blasting through sandstorms. Many competitors were specialized trucks or heavily modified 4x4 vehicles. It came as a surprise, then, when a rally raid car based on a little French hatchback started dominating this scene. That car was the Citroen ZX Rally Raid, derived from the everyday Citroen ZX. The Citroen ZX, the normal road car, was introduced in 1991 as a compact front-wheel drive hatchback. The kind of car people in Europe drove to work or to the grocery store. It was economical and unassuming. Certainly not something you would imagine leaping over sand dunes in the Sahara. But Citroen had big ambitions in motorsport. Building on the legacy of their sister company Peugeot, which had won multiple Dakar rallies in the late 1980s, Citroen developed a rally raid prototype that took the ZX's name and general shape, but underneath was a completely different beast. The Citroen ZX Rally Raid car, first unveiled in 1990, had a lightweight Kevlar and carbon fiber body that resembled the street ZX, but that is where the similarity ended. It was transformed into a mid-engine, four-wheel drive monster built purely for off-road racing. It featured a powerful turbocharged engine mounted behind the seats, pumping out around 300 to 330 horsepower, compared to roughly 100 horsepower in the normal ZX. It had a specially designed suspension with dual shock absorbers for each wheel to handle brutal terrain. In short, the Rally Raid version was an extreme machine wearing the humble face of an economy car. No homologated road version was required, so Citroen's engineers went wild in creating the ultimate desert racer. Citroen entered the Paris-Dakar Rally with the ZX Rally Raid in 1991. That year, a legendary Finnish driver, Ari Vatanen, was behind the wheel. Vatanen was already a World Rally champion and a multi-time Dakar winner, so his involvement signaled that Citroen meant business. Sure enough, the little Citroen ZX Rally Raid won the Paris-Dakar Rally in 1991 on its first try. It was an astonishing debut. A car based on a commuter hatchback took overall first place in the world's toughest off-road race, defeating the rugged 4x4 trucks and heavily modified SUVs. But this was just the start of a period of dominance. Throughout the mid-1990s, the Citroen ZX Rally Raid became the car to beat in Rally Raid competitions. With star drivers like Ari Vatanen and French driver Pierre Lartigue, the Citroen team was practically unbeatable. Consider this record. The Citroen ZX Rally Raid won the Paris-Dakar Rally 4 times in the 1990s. In 1991 with Vatanen, and then 3 more victories in 1994, 1995, and 1996 with Pierre Lartigue driving. It also dominated the FIA World Cup for cross-country rallies, which is a series of Rally Raid events around the world. The ZX Rally Raid won the World Cup 5 years in a row, from 1993 through 1997. In total, between 1990 and 1997, the Citroen ZX Rally Raid competed in 42 major Rally Raid events, and it won 36 of them. That is an incredible win rate, showing how superior this car was in its field. One automotive journalist noted that the ZX Rally Raid remained active until 1997. During this time, it won 4 Dakar titles and 5 FIA World Cup titles, proving its superiority against rivals. Indeed, it was perhaps the most accomplished Rally Raid car of its era. How did an economy car achieve this domination? The key is that the ZX Rally Raid was engineered specifically for endurance and speed over rough terrain. It took advantage of Citroen and Peugeot's rally experience. For instance, its design was an evolution of the Peugeot 405 Turbo 16 Grand Raid, a previous Dakar winner. The mid-engine layout gave it balanced weight distribution, and four-wheel drive with locking differentials gave it excellent traction on sand and mud. The body was aerodynamic, but allowed for high ground clearance, with big fender flares to accommodate a wide wheel track for stability. Despite having a strong steel chassis and 4x4 system, it was kept as light as possible with composite materials, weighing around 1,450 kilograms. This was relatively light for a Rally Raid car. This meant it could accelerate and handle almost like a giant rally car, not a truck. The engine, a 2.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder, gave it a top speed near 210 kilometers per hour, about 130 miles per hour, on flat desert stretches. In plain terms, the Citroen ZX Rally Raid was faster, more agile, and surprisingly durable over long distances compared to its competitors. The Citroen ZX Rally Raid's dominance lasted until the late 1990s, after which other manufacturers caught up or rules changed, but its legacy as an underdog turned champion remains. A car that started as a modest hatchback platform ended up winning the world's most grueling races multiple times. It is a reminder that in motorsport, engineering excellence and strategy can elevate even a simple economy car to glory. Citroen's little ZX proved it could run with and outrun the biggest off-road machines out there. In the 1960s, Peugeot was known for building cars that were unassuming but incredibly robust. The Peugeot 404 was one of its most successful models, a plain-looking four-door family sedan, also available as a wagon and pickup, introduced in 1960. It was not a sports car by any means. It had a 1.6-liter engine, seating for 5, and a reputation for reliability. The 404 became a global car, assembled in places like Africa and South America, because it could handle rough roads and keep going practically forever. African taxi drivers loved it. Farmers used the pickup version. It was truly an everyday workhorse car. But this durable design also made the Peugeot 404 an unexpectedly perfect candidate for endurance rallying. In the 1960s, the Peugeot 404 rose to prominence by dominating the East African Safari Rally, the same punishing event we discussed earlier, known as the toughest rally around, the 404's secret was not speed or power, but an uncanny ability to survive and finish when many faster cars could not. Peugeot's journey in the Safari Rally began in the early 1960s. In 1963, a privately entered Peugeot 404, driven by Nick Nowicki, a Kenyan driver, and his co-driver Paddy Cliff surprised everyone by winning the Safari Rally. That was Peugeot's first outright win in the event, and it was a huge achievement. The Safari was so difficult that finishing at all was considered a victory. The 1963 rally was one of those years with torrential rains that caused chaos, and indeed, only 7 cars made it to the finish. They were nicknamed the Unsinkable Seven. Nowicki's Peugeot 404 was one of them, and it came in first. This win put the 404 on the map as a rally contender. Over the next years, Peugeot 404 teams achieved repeated success in the Safari Rally, to the point of dominating the event in the mid-90s to late 1960s. In 1966, a Peugeot 404 won again, and not just once. The 404 proceeded to win 3 Safari Rallies in a row, 1966, 1967, and 1968. This string of victories established Peugeot as the master of the African rally at that time. A famous driver in these wins was Bert Shankland, a British-born driver who worked in Tanzania. Shankland, with co-driver Chris Rothwell, piloted a Peugeot 404 to victory in 1966 and repeated the feat in 1967. They nearly won a third time in 1968 as well, which would have been a hat trick, but their engine failed near the end of the 1968 rally while leading. Even so, another Peugeot 404, the one driven by Nowicki and Cliff again, took over and won in 1968, giving Peugeot that third consecutive win. These achievements meant that throughout the 1960s, the Abios Peugeot 404 won the Safari Rally a total of 4 times. In 1963, 1966, 1967, and 1968. An impressive record that made it legendary in rally circles. Why was the Peugeot 404 so successful in these grueling rallies? The answer lies in its build quality and durability. A contemporary article noted that the 404 achieved repeated success in events like the East African Safari Rally, one of the toughest races on the planet, and that drivers like Shankland proved the 404 could outrun more powerful rivals by simply staying intact when others fell apart. In other words, the 404's strength was reliability. It had a strong chassis and a suspension that, while not giving sports car handling, could absorb a lot of punishment from potholes and rocks. The engine in rally trim was upgraded. Some 404 rally cars even had a fuel-injected engine for a bit more performance, but it was still a very under-stressed, torquey engine that could run in extreme heat without overheating. During the safari, many sports cars or more complex machines would suffer broken axles, snapped suspensions, or electrical failures from the mud and vibration. The 404 just kept plodding along. It also had decent ground clearance for a car, which helped in rough sections. The Peugeot drivers also played it smart. Instead of sprinting and risking damage, they often maintained a solid, careful pace. Fast enough to be competitive, but slow enough to avoid wrecking the car. As the rallies wore on, the Peugeots would climb up the leaderboard as others dropped out. This strategy is sometimes called to finish first. First, you must finish. In rally raids and endurance rallies, that is often the key. The Peugeot 404 embodied this philosophy perfectly. It might not have had the raw speed of a Porsche or the nimbleness of a tiny Mini Cooper, which was winning rallies in Europe in the 1960s, but in the context of East Africa, speed was worthless without durability. In summary, the Peugeot 404's success story in racing is all about endurance and clever use of an ordinary car's strengths. It stood out in racing not by being the fastest or most advanced, but by being the most reliable and sturdy. When other cars' fancy components broke, the simple Peugeot kept going. Drivers like Nowicki and Shankland took advantage of this, driving smoothly to avoid trouble and pouncing when rivals stumbled. The result was an economy family sedan became a 4-time champion of one of the world's hardest rallies. The 404's racing glory might not be as universally known as, say, a Ferrari's Le Mans wins, but in the rally world, it is the stuff of legend. Even today, if you travel to East Africa and see an old Peugeot 404 still running on a rural road, you might be looking at a distant echo of those rally heroes. Cars that never say die, and in doing so, reached the winner's circle. The Peugeot 404 proved that endurance can beat speed in the right circumstances, making it another brilliant underdog that dominated racing in its era.